These days, with rising grocery costs, everyone is getting more concerned about how far their grocery dollars are going to stretch. It is an issue. It's one that sadly is not expected to get better anytime soon due to a whole bunch of things like supply chain issues and more. However, there are some things that you can do to improve and stretch your grocery dollars a little bit further, which is why I am absolutely delighted to have my dear friend and colleague, Katie Oglesby, on to talk with us. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we are just going to dive in and get started. Katie is a garden designer. She's also a certified health coach. Her specialty is designing beautiful gardens that help her clients and their families to reach health and lifestyle goals. She believes that gardens truly are a way to heal your body, clear your mind, nourish your soul, love your life. And she is a huge proponent of fork to table. Katie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this today with you.
And I will share, one of the things that I absolutely love from the conversations that you and I have had before is how achievable it really is to be able to grow even just a little bit. You and I were joking a little bit earlier, you don't need 40 acres and a horse in order to grow food.
Very true. It's very true. We can supplement a lot. I just don't think we even realize the little bits up and how easy it is just to add a little bit of your own to your plate.
One of the ways that I think a lot of people can start without even realizing it is in container gardens. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that you can grow in a container garden that would then be able to come into your kitchen and onto your plate?
So container gardens are great for a lot of things. So the first thing that comes to mind is going to be a salad garden. Our greens are traveling such a long distance by the time they reach our kitchens, and the nutrient density is compromised, and you can grow a lot of bang for your buck in a container. Even a lettuce bowl on your patio table is going to get you some fresh greens. So for example, a 4x4 section, so it's 16 square growing feet, which is not very big, fed my husband and I salad for over a month. So from that standpoint, greens are, usually 30 to 50 days, depending on whether it's spinach, arugula, or romaine. And so that was something that we could each eat a salad every day. And I think that's substantial when we look at the price of greens, to be able to add that, to get one meal out of it with adding your protein source. So that is one great option, that it's very easy to grow greens pretty much anywhere. They don't need a lot of light. They prefer not direct sunlight. So you have 4 to 6 hours. It's actually be more beneficial. Another great thing would be root crops. So beets and radishes and carrots, small crops like that are a great thing to add a row to your salad garden. Or if it's something that you do a lot of juicing or your family eats a lot of carrots, very easy thing to accomplish in a container with well-drained soil. I was at the grocery store the other day and I saw a bunch of rainbow carrots and I grabbed them, and I don't pay particularly close attention this time of year when things are coming in, pay more attention in the winter, but 6 rainbow organic carrots were $4. Whoa. And that was quite perspective when I can buy like 5,000 seeds of carrots for $8. And even if half of them didn't work, I'm still ahead. So that kind of point of reference with those smaller crops is a great thing. If your family loves tomatoes, grow them in a container. A lot of those fruiting vegetables, they take up more space. If that's a priority for your family, by all means, they will grow in container gardens. So one of the main things I like to ask people is, what is your goal? What is something you guys love to eat? And use and supplement with that. That's where you get the most joy out of. So, and then lastly, herbs. Herbs are a great thing that you grow in containers. They're easy. Flavor factor for all of our meals, throw them in your juices and smoothies. I mean, particularly when you see a small little packet of wilted herbs for $3 or $4 at the store, I mean, you can get a lot out of that basil plant. So really thinking and getting conscientious about what it is that you do enjoy, and then allocating those container spaces for those items.
And that's such a great tip, especially because some of those crops, like the root crops, you can actually get double duty out of them. For example, you can eat beet greens. You could use carrot greens to make a pesto or to chop a little bit of them up into a salad. I mean, they are kind of pungent, so you don't want to use a lot. That's a great way to sort of extend a little bit more. I also love the idea of truly fresh, having herbs that you just walk outside and pick only what you need. Because if you buy those little plastic packages at the grocery store, it only lasts for so long. And then you have more plastic to throw away. Yes. So that's a really great tip. So what if someone had a little bit more space and they were able to, I'm assuming, maybe they're going to start with a couple of containers and go, hey, this isn't so bad. And then possibly take out some of the ornamentals in the backyard or maybe the front yard, depending on where you live, and putting in some other things. What are some of the bigger things that might be fun to grow that would be really nourishing for the family?
So obviously our staple items, the zucchinis and the peppers and the tomatoes, and those are just things we think of right away. I say we go more into like some sugar snap peas, and we have, cucumbers are another great staple because some of those you can grow vertically and still have some space around the base of the plant. So getting creative with how you grow any of those climbing plants, eggplant, getting some of that in there, some fennel. I like to grow a lot of fennel in my garden. More space would be, I think a Brussels sprout plant is really key because our broccoli and cauliflowers, if you're tight on space, are kind of one-hit wonders. But that Brussels sprout plant, as you're just cutting those little fruit right up off the stem, and you can get a lot of harvest and a little bit more bang for your buck from a real estate standpoint with those bigger brassica plants. So I like to tell people, throw in a Brussels sprout plant. I think it's, you can freeze them, you can put them in your salad, you can roast them. So that's where I like to kind of like get people to think a little bit more outside the box with some of those vegetables that we aren't maybe the typical vegetables that you like to grow, but that your family enjoys. And then you have the winter squash, which is a great thing to store. So if you're thinking long-term, squash, winter squash we can store, potatoes we can store, onions we can store in a cool place. So some of those things too, as you're going into the fall and the holiday season and you like some of those types of plants, that's a great thing that to extend your season also. The garden will keep giving even when it's not producing.
One of the things that I love too about thinking about seasonality in the garden is the nutrient density of the things that you're planting yourself. Because let's be really honest, most of the stuff that we get at the grocery store is not local, which means there's a lot of food miles. And as a matter of fact, the average item at the grocery store travels 1,500 miles to wind up on your plate. So that's a lot of fuel, a lot of processing to get there. But the other thing is with produce, they have to pick it early so it ripens on the journey, which means it's actually not as flavorful. It's not as nutrient dense. If you're growing it yourself and you're picking it right then and there, you're getting maximum nutrition.
It is true. And I think the tomato is the biggest thing. Like we can tell store tomatoes taste nothing like a homegrown tomato. And your palate will start to realize other vegetables are just the same. Is when you can pick them at their ripe and bring them right in and enjoy them, your appreciation level goes up too, because we realize the transportation does come at a cost to flavor and nutrient density. So it's a great point.
One of the other things I love to point out to people, so for example, we are growing tomatoes in our garden right now. When I pick our tomatoes, they are not, first of all, they're not perfectly round, globe-shaped tomatoes. They're kind of lumpy. Maybe this one has a little extra wart on it. They're also not evenly red. They're not uniform. And the way they get that marbled shape, that perfect round shape, and that perfect red all around is because they pick it when it's green and still hard, and then they force ripen it with ethylene gas. And it doesn't taste like a tomato.
No. It doesn't. It doesn't taste like a tomato. No, I think it's one of the best examples out there. Anybody who enjoys a fresh garden tomato and then goes to the store, you can't compete.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you talk a lot about forks and helping people learn how to think in that mindset. Are there any specific tips about learning how to incorporate that into menu planning or cooking?
One of the biggest things that I like to do is I pick a day of the week that I harvest. And I think a lot of times we have this misconception when you're in the northern states that we garden Memorial Day to Labor Day, and that's not true. And another thing is waiting until August or a certain month where it all comes at once. So I like to succession plant so I can plan a little bit, and then I pick one day a week and I harvest everything that's ripe. And I do a little inventory. I separate what we can't eat for the week and I save that for later, whether it gets frozen, dehydrated, canned. So we're doing it in a little bit of chunks. And then I take a look at what we have and I plan accordingly. You know, eating with the seasons is important. It's important for our bodies. But that's where we're getting creative too. Nobody wants to eat, 5 pounds of green beans for 2 weeks straight. So I really make sure we think about succession planting those items and thinking ahead of different ways to incorporate them. So when we do meal plan, we don't get to the end of the week and we're like, we didn't eat all of these, right? So we've preserved some for later. We've portioned out enough for the week. And then I take some time to kind of plan out how we're going to enjoy them.
That is such a great thought. So when it comes to succession planting, how far apart, let's say beans, like I love bush beans because they're so versatile. You can do so many different things with them. And if you have them young, you use them one way. If you wait till they're a little bit older, you can do other things with them. But how far apart would you plant something like that in order to get a succession crop?
You know, I go about every 10 to 14 days, I will succession plant beans. And that's another caveat is looking at what varieties you're growing, because you can succession with varieties, because if you look at the seed packet, you'll see so many days to harvest. So, or you can take the same variety because you know when if they're 50-day provider beans, then I look and I know, I'm going to start them in May and I'm going to succession through the middle of June in the northern states, and I can get them, almost through into the middle of September. So I would if say you just had a 25-foot row, hypothetically, I would divide the row into 3. So I knew I had 3 plantings that would kind of give me that season extender. I think being more thoughtful about that allows the garden to give more for you.
That is such a fabulous idea. Now, I know for some things like beans, obviously you are going to plant those from seed, but for other things, especially for people who live in a suburban setting like I do, starting things like tomatoes from seed may be a little bit more challenging. We may not think that far ahead. Yeah. What are some important things to look for if you're buying plants that have already been started?
So that's a very good question. So when you go to look for plants, so health of the plant is important. So if you're seeing droopy, dried soil, I was shying away from that. I also sometimes will pull the container off to see how root bound that is, because that plant has been in there for then probably a long time. Sometimes it gets confused. You'll see I have clients that'll buy plants and be so excited there's already tomatoes on there. We don't want that. I make them cut them off. It's a devastating process, but we don't want that to be fruiting yet. We want the plant to grow to some height first. So that's people get very excited when they see fruit already on these little seedlings, and I'm like, cut it off, because the plant is ahead, or it thinks it's ready to do that and nowhere to grow except for that little container. Wow. And so cilantro is another one that I say try to start by seed, because it's a quick bolter. People love it. And it seems to be one of the biggest garden fails for people. Yeah. And so I do a lot of that by seed, and every couple of weeks seed some more, just because it gets confused. If it's been sitting there and trucked and we don't know where it's from, it thinks it can't go any farther. So it's just going to start producing its fruit. And we don't want that yet. So looking for root bound, any type of dried soil where it looks a little crisp or wilty. Those are some things I would avoid.
That is such a great tip, because I have to believe, so I was gifted with an eggplant and it already had eggplant on it, little ones, and I let them go, but I took it and put it into a bigger pot. I got 3 eggplant, and I think that's pretty much it. The plant is still doing its thing, but it doesn't look like there's any more. So I wonder if I had picked those off, if it would have, because it doesn't fill the pot. So if it would have filled the pot a little bit more, and I would have gotten more than 3 eggplants.
It's very hard for people to be like, I don't want to cut the fruit. I'm like, we have to cut the fruit. It's hard. We see it, we're excited. But it's actually not in the best interest of the plant.
Well, that is so good to know. Thank you for sharing that. So another question that I have for you, let's say someone's got a little bit more space and they could possibly plant a tree, which obviously means fruit or nuts. What is a really great starter tree for somebody to consider adding to their garden?
I would say an apple tree would be my first plan of action, would be an apple tree, and to research what varieties obviously grow well in your zone. Buying it locally from a local nursery, typically they're only going to carry what varieties, or they should be carrying what varieties will do well in your zone. But I would start with an apple tree, would be my first tree to start with. And that, when you get into these perennial crops, whether it's fruit trees or berries, things like that, as rule of thumb is make sure that variety goes great in your zone, because the last thing we want to do is plant something that's not going to thrive. It's a disappointment. So be conscientious of that. But typically the apple trees are the most hardy.
And that's such a great point. I will share that, you live up in the Northeast. I live in Texas. And believe it or not, there are apple trees that do grow here. One of the things that I've learned is if you're trying to figure out what plants will grow well in your area, like you said, if you're looking for trees or fruiting bushes or things like that, if you go to your Master Gardeners Association, they can tell you what specifically will do well in your area.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's a really great resource. Now, I know you have a course where you help people, don't you?
We do. I have a garden to table membership. So we work through the season together. And, mostly zones 4 through 7 are pretty comparable. And Mother Nature is never consistent, right? So every year is a little bit different and brings us different challenges, different insects, different pests, different seasonalities. And so we will kind of work through together. We meet twice a month, and we'll work through not only planning our garden, troubleshooting our garden, but the succession planting and making sure that we're preserving as we go and not waiting to the end. And I have a chef that does different recipes every month to really challenge you guys to try new things, to incorporate them differently onto your plate, and to get creative. Like, this is something that I think it's about being outside. It's a great lifestyle with your family. We're doing some cut flower stuff because I think flowers and edibles are an important part of the garden. I think beauty is an important part. And so we're really taking that garden to a new level, as far as even from a food standpoint, a health standpoint, and just a lifestyle. So yeah, we have a great bunch of women that are in it right now, and they're all learning as they go, and they learn from each other. And being a gardener is a forever learner. Like, you're never going to stop learning. I'm being humbled and to share things with people and learn. And there's no one way to do it. We can all do things a little bit differently and still get the same outcome. My goal is not to make you a master horticulturist. It's for you to grow enough food for your family and to make sure you're eating real fresh food on your.
And that's such a fabulous point, because when we have things like fresh food and fresh flowers, there's something in the human spirit that just really responds to that. Like, we get so excited by growing things. And if we're growing them ourselves, how much better is that? That's really wonderful.
It is. And to watch, children, and it's a family activity. So not only are you outside learning and your kids are in nature, then you're all bringing it into the kitchen together, and you're elevating your palates together, and you're cooking and preserving. I think the skill sets too that you learn are invaluable.
That is such a wonderful point. Katie, you've shared so much amazing stuff with us. This was really, really great. If someone wanted to connect with you to learn more about your garden club, or how to, work with you or whatever, how would they find you? Where are you?
Yep. So you can head to my website, which is katieoglesby.com, and it's KatieOglesby. And all of my services are on the website.
That sounds great. I will also share that you have a phenomenal Instagram. You're always sharing the most amazing garden pictures. So I'll make sure to put all those links down below for people. But thanks again so much for being with us and sharing all of your wonderful knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here with you, Mira.
All right. Take care, folks. Don't forget to check out all the information down below. Please also click like, subscribe, and come back for more great guests later. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.